Welcome everyone to the Leo podcast. So, as you guys might know, this is my very first time showing my face on the screen. So, hello to everyone. My name is Aman. This is Varun over here. He'll be our guest speaker for today. And the topic for today's conversation of the podcast is Beginner's Guide to Open Source Development. And before we go any forward, let's just have a brief introduction of Varun. So, Varun, if you would like to introduce yourself.
So hi guys, my name is Varun Khatri. I'm basically a self-taught developer. I have taught myself Node.js, I've taught myself React, I taught myself Flutter. And it's been quite a great journey for me to learn everything on my own. And if I can do it, I can believe like anyone can. That's my point.
Okay. So, before we move forward, can you just give me a brief background on how you got into programming?
So basically, my early venture into programming started in 1910. I was in ICSE school. So basically, in ICSE school, we have this thing called Java, which we have to do in 1910 standard. And I took that subject in 1910. And first year, that is ninth standard, I really hated Java because I couldn't understand anything. And it was quite a complex language for me. And 10th standard, I actually enrolled for classes because I feared that I would fail in Java. But there was one teacher whom I can't remember the name of, but she actually pretty much taught me Java from top to bottom, and she actually made me understand how to write programs, utilizing the logic and logic statement and stuff like that. And it more became like utilizing my brain writing programs rather than just ratifying all the programs for the exam. So that was my first foray into programming. 11th and 12th, I didn't do any programming because I didn't have that subject. And then I started college as a computer science degree undergrad. And since then, I started with HTML, CSS, very basic stuff, ekdam basic stuff. And from there, I've been gone into JavaScript frameworks such as React. Uh, Even I've learned Node.js as well, Express.js, Nest.js, and then database systems as well, such as PostgreSQL, SQL, MySQL, and even backend development using Node.js, Express, Nest.js, and then as such, I've done a lot of projects as well. Yeah, that's basically my background.
Thanks for the introduction. It was a pretty long one, but yeah, it's fine. But just give me a brief intro on open source now. What do you think about open source? And can you also, like, if you have any idea on it, can you brief us on why open source was started?
Open source, in my opinion, is basically completely publicizing your code of a given software. Now that actually entails with a lot of security concerns, which actually comes with it. But till now, open source has been pretty much deliver secure software to everyone who is interested in using open source software. And basically, it also helps development of a community around the software as well. Like, for example, if you see React, there's a whole React community around it. And then also, if you see open source products such as Bitwarden Password Manager, even they are a completely open source company, and they have a whole community around the company as well to support the project and support the company as well. And why do I think open source was started? Basically, as someone might have just a single, might be a very much a game changer idea, like $1 million idea, but they are just a single developer. So they would just do a very like MVP sort of thing, minimum viable product. They'll make a minimum viable product and just put it on open source. And then people look into that product and they see the potential of the product, and then they start contributing to it. So open source opens up new avenues for people to contribute in your project as well. So, for example, if you see Vue.js, Vue.js is a framework which is like has no big company backing at all, and it started as a small project competing against a big giant framework such as React, which is backed by Facebook, and Angular, which was backed by Google. So Vue.js was just a small framework, but as in when people started using it and understanding how great framework that is, people started contributing more into it. And as you can see the statistics now, Vue.js is basically pretty much fighting a good battle against those two frameworks. And there are millions of stories which are like that, which helps put the community aspect of open source into perspective, which helps in justifying why open source is important in this computer science background. So one more just example I wanted to give is just I think 11 years back, there's one company called id Software actually open sourced the game engine as well, called Quake Engine, and then Quake Engine was used by a lot of indie developers till to date. to develop high quality games, and it's
Okay.
a very much loved software as well. So basically,
Hmm.
open source helps a lot of people help in development of a good idea if you don't have a big financial backing for it.
Okay. So what I understood from all of this, that the main aspect of open source is that I think you get to build communities around it. So people like companies like Reactive View that you talked about, so they have a huge community around them. So people help each other out in that process as well. You also talked about the minimum viable product, that so if someone has wants to create a company, right, so they make like a small minimum viable product of it and they just open source it out. So how do people publicize that project, and how do they make that community of sorts for themselves? Like Linux now has like a huge broad range of people contributing to it right now. Again, but I mean, it's not like everyone's allowed to contribute on it, so it's just only like if it's accepted by the people out there. We'll get into this topic later on, but just tell me, how do people find the communities, if they want to build that minimum viable product?
That actually comes down to marketing the product as well. If you build up a whole very much a basic application of the idea which you want to make it to a company, you can first of all you open source the whole thing, which is great. Second thing, you have to do some marketing for it to getting people to actually invest in your project, be it VCs and stuff like that. You go to VCs and for asking for investments into your company and into the development of your project.
Okay.
But also, if you like, also help in marketing in the development space or developer community as well. So people will see your product as well, and they will see if it's an idea if they want to work on, and they start contributing to it as well. Now there are very much big forums such as Stack Overflow, the whole Reddit community, the Reddit forum community, which can start, you're publicizing or like marketing your own product over there. And there have been many success stories, which actually I can say that there's like people have started small games which they have developed, and then they posted on the gaming forum on Reddit, and they have generated a lot of hype behind the game as well. So it comes down to marketing your product as well. It's not like if you just develop and then put it on GitHub, people will directly see your project. But it's like you have to even market the product as well. So like you can go on to Reddit as well. Reddit, where there are a lot of communities around frameworks, React framework, then there's Firebase community as well. And if you've developed a product using React, you can directly go to r/React and display your product over. And people might see your code as well. If they're interested, they'll start contributing to it as well. And basically, this is all comes down to marketing your product as well to developers as well. Because again, you are just a sole developer. You don't have the financial backing of a huge company. You are just a sole developer. You don't. But if you are not, you might be a sole developer or you might be a small team. But if you can get a lot of people's opinion on your project as well, they might even contribute to make your project a lot better in terms of security or like in terms of efficiency, and that actually helps start a whole movement behind it. There's a very good documentary which was published from Vue.js, and I highly recommend watching that as well because it's a very interesting story behind the framework. And similarly, a lot of frameworks built around on this story as well. Like there's Felt.js as well, is another framework which has no financial backing of a big company, but they actually started as a small project. People found out the project, how they marketed and stuff like that, and now the project is very much popular. And again, fighting against the big three like Facebook, Microsoft, and other companies.
Okay. So when you talk about this, when that they
Mm.
need to, if they want to finance the project, if they want to build that community around that, right? So this is if they want to make it like a big product, right? If you don't
Yeah.
want to do that, if you're just like a student, if you're like students here, we're early developers. If you want to create like
Mm-hmm.
an open source project, if you want to put it on GitHub, so if you want people to contribute to that project, so what can they do?
So again, it's not like Reddit is only reserved for people who want to bring up companies around their project. It can range from if you have a very small project which you just want to show it off, or like if you want some someone just getting interested in your project, you can still use those communities again. There are a lot of repositories on GitHub as well, which actually have this long lists of projects, like example projects which you do using a one framework. I think those are called like awesome lists or something like that. But even there, if you can contribute your project over there, people might start seeing a project and they will find it interesting as well. They might even follow in your footsteps as well. That's one more thing you can do. There's a whole community in GitHub as well. Awesome lists, I think it is pronounced like that, or awesome open source or something like that. There's like a particular section called projects using this, or like example projects using this framework. You can directly contribute over there and mention your project that you're using this framework, and people will see over there. And this is basically a small marketing for your very small project as well. That works as well.
How did you get into open source?
So my foray into open source was basically I joined this one community in our college. This is called Now Mozilla Club. And before that, I had no idea about open source. I had no idea about Git or GitHub. I was just this guy who actually just knew a bit of Java. That's it. I just interviewed and then joined the club. And after I joined the club, I got to know a lot about Git and GitHub. And there was this one guy who actually like preached a lot about using Git and GitHub for your projects because there's a lot of companies actually use those versioning systems, and if you can understand those versioning systems way before actually developing projects now, it's still a very good thing because there's a lot of developers who are very good with the frameworks, but they don't know how to use a versioning system properly. So that's the thing. I got into Git and GitHub and I started building my own profile around the building my whole portfolio based on my liking of frameworks and stuff like that. And I have been since then contributing to open source projects.
Okay. So has contributing to any open source project help you in in your professional life, like in projects or in companies or internships that you worked on?
Yes, a lot. Actually, it helped me a lot because when you're applying for jobs, and if you mention that this is your GitHub ID, a lot of those recruiters will actually open up GitHub and view your profile on there, and they will actually fact check if whatever you're saying is correct or not. Because a lot of people just fork the project and then keep that on the profile, and then they just say that this is my project. So basically, this helps in fact checking also, but also if you build up a very attractive portfolio on GitHub, you will attract a lot of recruiters if you want to get into jobs and stuff like that, and also helps you a lot in profession as I said professional life. It also helps a lot in displaying putting up a showcase for your own this thing, your technical prowess over the frameworks which you use. And yeah, basically helps in developing a good portfolio. People develop a lot of portfolio websites, and that is great as well. But also, if your portfolio on GitHub is also great as well, like your website, that actually works a lot.
Okay, so till now we've been talking about just the technical side of open source development that coders can contribute to it. So is there any way that non-coders can contribute if they want to contribute to an open source project? What can they do if you're a non-coder?
So basically, open source is not only limited to programmers as well. Open source actually, like a lot of projects, if you see, there's a lot of documentation which you have to read into it as well. So basically, if you want to improve the language on the understanding of the documentation as well, you can go in that as well. And it's not like you have to know everything from top to bottom. Even like getting started, or like talking about how many companies use this project, or like how many just giving out introduction of the project itself. You can go into those aspects as well. Then you can also go into community management as well. Like for example, Facebook already has a big, huge community around it for React. So you can become a community manager in the same as well. I mean, you still have to have some basic understanding of the framework. It's not like they'll just pick up any Tom, Dick, and Harry just to become a community manager. But you still have to have some basic information about the framework. But you can also go into community management as well. There you can also go into content creation around the frameworks as well. It's not like you can if you're very much good into like research and stuff like that. So a lot of people actually put up the research code which they have found, put it on GitHub as well, or like research papers on GitHub as well, and you can actually like just scan through those, and you can develop some content around it on if you want to post it on YouTube and stuff like that.
Have you heard of the term developer advocate?
Actually, I haven't. And can you please tell me about the developer advocate?
Recently, I've been posting a lot on Instagram. Besides that, what I'm doing is that I started my Twitter account also, but I don't have a lot of followers over there. So I've been looking. This was the first time I heard of it, but I was looking at some of the people like I don't know if you've heard of Nick White. He's a pretty big YouTuber. So people like him, and there's also one guy called Pratham on Twitter. So these guys are like developer advocates. So I don't know who those guys were. But the thing is that if you are someone who has knowledge on the technical aspects of things as well, you can be like a promotional person for them. So developer advocates are people who act as a bridge between the company and the developer community. So like if I'm building a product for you, right? So we need someone who has a strong technical sense also to explain that product to someone else, right? So that maybe through your Twitter account, maybe through your Instagram account, maybe you write blog posts and all those things. They want someone who can, be like an advocate for the both parties, who helps the developer community to understand the product that the company is building.
If you want to even market your own projects as well, if you like, if you made a small framework and if you think that this framework is actually helping solve this and this problem, you can actually contact those developer advocates as well for marketing your project as well to people who are actually in that developer space as well. Am I wrong on that, or am I right? If I ask your opinion.
I'm not perfectly sure. I think that these developer advocates are basically catering towards the company, not to the whole community. So I think they'll just promote the product of the company, not to the. Maybe if they want, you can contact them. They could explain to you the project or product, whatever that is. But I don't think they'll do that because they get paid for what they do, right?
Okay.
So for the company, but for you, it's not like you can't contact them personally. You could contact them; they might explain it to you, but I don't think it works like that. Okay, so if I'm an early developer, right? So what's the starting point for me? What are the minimum requirements for me to begin contributing to open source projects?
So basically, I would say at least some basic programming understanding has to be there if you want to start, contributing into open source projects. So if you're interested in contributing to React projects, we have to have some understanding of JavaScript and the React ecosystem in perpetuity. And you even have to have some understanding of basic coding principles such as object-oriented programming, of like functional programming, or like what are classes, what is strings, what are literals, and stuff like that. At least you have to have that understanding, completely there in you, and you just have to, you have to know those terms properly. And then you have to even at least know some design patterns as well. Like, because a lot of projects actually use a lot of different design patterns. Like, for example, if you look into the Nest.js project, it is utilizing the MVC design pattern. So like at least some understanding of some design patterns should be there. Like very much popular ones are like MVC or like functional programming and like Lambda, stuff like that. At least have some basic understanding of that. And then also basic understanding of those frameworks which you're interested in programming, contributing. If you're interested in contributing into React projects, so you have to have some understanding of React as well. Yeah. And then the basic version control stuff as well. Like, for example, if you're using GitHub or like Atlassian or like some other SVN protocols such as Mercurial and stuff like that, you have to have those understanding down as well. So I would say this is like the beginner point which you should know before contributing into open source companies.
But wouldn't it take a lot of time for people to just to get to know all these things? Like if you're talking about learning basic principles of everything a little bit, like functional programming or different kind of coding patterns, and besides that, learning a bit of React.js if you want to contribute to that. Okay, that's perfectly fine. Like, you need to know a little bit of the language if you want to contribute to it. But but as a beginner, for me, would it be possible, like, if I've made just a simple basic project, like I'm in my first year of college, I just learned about web development. Maybe in my second year, I just learned about web development, and I made like a basic CRUD-based app, right? And I think the most common ones we learn in college, everyone probably learns, is MySQL, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, those things. So what can I do with those languages? Like, if I just know CSS, HTML, JavaScript, can I do something with those languages? No frameworks, no nothing, no databases, no frameworks, no nothing. Is there anything possible for me as a beginner?
That's absolutely possible. Because I was just like talking about like contributing to frameworks, but there are like separate projects as well. Like people make to-do apps or like something like that, and if they're building it using the thing which you can even contribute to those simple projects as well. There is no hard and fast limit that you need to know those frameworks as well. But like, there's a lot of projects on GitHub. If you see, they utilize very basic front end mechanism, like back end mechanisms. You can contribute to those as well. there's no hard and fast rule that you have to contribute to only large projects. A lot of small projects actually have a lot of hype behind them as well. You contribute to those as well. That's not a problem.
Okay, so can you just tell me some things like what kind of qualities a person, gets to learn if they start contributing to an open source project? When I say qualities, I mean, like most probably, I think you can learn team building skills with people, communication skills, because you're not contributing to your own project, right? So you learn things like that. So what kind of qualities do people learn? What kind of qualities will they learn if they contribute to an open source project?
So first and foremost, I would say is the biggest quality I think anyone feels very much happy to achieve is that the fear of reading other people's code. You have the innate fear in you that you can't read this project or like you can't understand what they've written. But you start reading and reading and reading, then you'll start to understand how some of the projects are actually built around it. And like it's not like you have to even contribute. You can, if you're just using this particular framework or like this particular service, and if they have an open source link as well, you can just open it up, start reading the code which you have written there, written over there, and you can just try it and start understanding what they've written, because this is one of the biggest, biggest qualities of any developer. Because when you're working in a company, it's not like you're the only sole developer over there. A lot of developers will be working alongside you, and if they're writing some code, and if you want to build something upon that as well, if your task is building something upon something which someone else wrote, you have to understand how to read people's code. That might be through comments or like documentation stuff which is provided with the project as well, or and it also helps in like when you joining a company, you might be even given a role of maintaining a legacy project or like converting a legacy project to a more recent project. Like for example, in the Java space, a lot of legacy projects are actually present over there, and they are now actually I think they have did it till Java 8 now, and they're now transporting it to Java 11 now. So you start reading other people's code and you understand how certain things work. That's one of the biggest qualities which I think you can start. You will learn when you start contributing to open source as well. And also this also entails like learning about different patterns or different design patterns and such, and like understanding the different types of coding patterns. Like for example, there's the OOP based of systems, then there's functional based systems as well. You start learning those as well, and you start understanding those as well, and that actually helps you a lot because someday you might see there's like a for loop over there, and you might just say, "Arey, for loop you." I might just use a functional pattern or like a dot for each loop or like dot map or something like that, because you read somewhere that dot map and dot for each actually helps in making the code more readable, and also like in some frameworks or some languages they actually have some some technical advantages of using those functional patterns. So you might just even improve the performance of the system as well. And that's like a big thing as well. But I feel like if you start reading people contributing into open source, you'll start learning different patterns. You start having that confidence in yourself that you can start reading other people's code. That helps a lot when you're when you're a new developer in this space.
So if I have a problem, like let's say if I'm not able to read the code, I'm not able to understand what's going to happen in the code. Like I know the language, I know HTML, CSS, I know JavaScript. I might be, let's say I'm trying to build a button. I want to, make the functionality using JavaScript or clicking the button. But I'm a fresher. I'm a beginner programmer. I don't know how to. I'm not able to understand or find the code that's going to do that for me. So, like, how can I contact people? Like, how can I ask for help from the people who created the code? Is there any way to do that?
So this is quite a great field for me as well. I would say a lot of contributors actually have discussion boards up on GitHub as well. Like a lot of actually I saw a lot of projects having a discussion board for FAQs or like general people, like a lot of new people asking new questions based on this, or understanding how the framework works. So there are a lot of discussion boards which you can take part in and like start asking questions over there. And developer community is very much understanding, and like if you just ignore Stack Overflow for a while, you can say that the larger part of the developer community are very helpful, and they will actually help out a lot of beginners when you're understanding a project. That actually helps a lot. And then there's a lot of developers behind the project which have their own Twitter handles and stuff like that. if they are open to DMs, you can ask them as well. That's just what I feel about the whole communication.
Why don't you think people contribute to open source?
So the biggest reason why I feel like people don't contribute to open source, because if you just open up repositories and just see the types of issues that they have created, it can get overwhelming very quickly, because you will see loads of issues created over there. You will see a lot of foreign terms over there. You will see needs triage and stuff like that. And you will just become very much overwhelmed. What is this? What am I doing? What am I reading? So that becomes a very big issue for beginners trying to get into open source, uh, you know, contribution as well. And that's like the biggest thing which I feel like is like very much hindering the progress to get into open source. And also, I would say that types of issues becomes very complex, and then there are loads of people working on loads of people are working in on very popular projects such as React and stuff like that. So if you want to contribute to an issue, it becomes like a rat race as well. Like some people might think this is an easy issue, and even if you might think it's an easy issue, so people might just go there before you and then contribute to it and like close the issue completely before you get a chance to it. I mean, you can still read up what they have done and stuff like that. But it becomes like a rat race as well, because there's a lot of people behind this one project as well. If you start looking into projects as well, think if you start reading code and you feel like a beginner, you might not even know common design patterns such as MVC and stuff like that, and you would just be completely confused. What is happening over there? What is a controller? What is a service? What is a repository? And you would just be very much confused over there. So that becomes a big hassle as well, trying to get into the open source contribution as well.
Okay. So you use the term issues a lot. Can you just explain me what issues are?
Like in a very basic term in English, what we say in issue is basically some sort of problem which is existing somewhere. Basically, those are what issues are. Might it be that the product might be feature incomplete? Might there be that there are some bugs relating to the product, or like there might be some some documentation which is like missed out. So those are what issues are in my opinion.
Okay. So how do I locate the proper project for me? So if I'm a early developer, right? I just told you like my main skills are HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So how can I locate that project for me, which I would want to contribute in, not the fancy Linux contributions or Vue contributions, nothing like that.
So first of all, I would say if you're like using, like for example, with JavaScript, you might use some package or something like that. Okay, so you can start looking into the package repositories. It's not like you have to contribute to something completely foreign to you. If you're using this one package, might be you have developed a server using Express.js. So you can look into the Express car repository and the types of issues over there. That's one thing you can do. Second thing which you can do is you can start contributing to smaller projects as well, because you don't want to get into the whole Linux or like React contribution as well. So you can start contributing into smaller projects. Like for example, as I said before, you might be using some package which might, like for example, I've used this package called FL Charts, which is like a charting library for Flutter. So it's a very much like a small project compared to what Flutter actually is. And there might be, the code size might be, the code base might be very much less and might be very much understandable, and even the number of issues which might be existing in that that package might be less as well, so it becomes less overwhelming for you as well to get into that. Second thing I would say, if you're looking into issues, you might have to start with the good first issue tags, because those tags are actually created for developers who are actually very much new into the contributing field. So a lot of repositories actually have you know good first issue tags over there, and they actually like range from very basic stuff to like some documentation which they have might some people have might have not contributed to. You can either write documentation for it, or like you can solve this very easy bug someone you can fix or you can understand. So that becomes a good stepping point for you as well to start contributing into open source projects. And there's a lot of like basic good first issues which you can start contributing into. It's not like this good first issue is like very complex for anyone to contribute to, but it like you can start contributing via the good first issue tags. That's basically what I would say.
Okay, so now tell me some red and green flags of finding a project. Like if I I found a project, right? It's not
Mhm.
the main package of, like, if I'm using JavaScript, it's not the main JavaScript repository I want to contribute to. It's a different project
Mhm.
created by someone. So how do I know this is a good project for me? What are the red and green flags I should look out for?
So first of all, I would say, if you are like, for example, you are on Java, you are coding on JavaScript, so you might be familiar with this system for NPM, Node Package Manager. Okay, so that one thing you can look into if those projects are like actively maintained. Now, what I mean by actively maintained is like there are some publication, like the package has been updated recently. By recently, what I mean is like maybe like a month or two before it should have been updated, or like have some sort of patch given out when you looking into repository which you want to contribute to. First of all is that actively maintain projects. Second is basically looking into projects which have a helpful community around the package as well, or the some framework as well. So because if you have a helpful community, so basically people might be reporting a lot of new good first issues as well. And
Hmm.
good first issues are very much important for new developers to get into. So if you have a very helpful community, equals a lot of new good first issues, equals that you can start contributing into those good new first issues as well. And also the maintainers, and what I mean by helpful community as well is that they shouldn't be arrogant or stuff like that. There is one package. I don't want to start a drama, but there's this one package called Type ORM, which I very much enjoy using it. But there was this one issue reported where like if you are using this where clause, it actually somewhat deletes the table itself when you're using the where clause. And this issue was reported on their GitHub page. And the thing is like the maintainer was like, this just by design, and they were very much arrogant against fixing the bug if they're actually in the where clause itself. That also actually you have to judge yourself as well if the community is helpful, because you might even find a lot of toxic people in this space as well, and you want to just avoid that. And also, if you're looking into projects, there's this one project called Micro ORM. So the thing is that this Micro ORM project actually has like only one contributor or like one maintainer, because this guy actually does everything himself, and he's like directly trying to compete with Type ORM as well. So there might be loads of issues over there, but there's just only one guy who's maintaining the whole project. So you might be stuck, solving this bug, and like that bug will be, you might open up pull request over there, and that pull request might be open for months and months for it. So you have to even look out for those projects as well. That's
Okay.
what I would say, like how to judge if it's a good repository or a good project if you want to contribute.
So the issues that you are talking about. So what the issues they write, right? So how do I get to know if this is a good issue or not? Like, can you give me some examples of like good written issues?
So when people start submitting new issues to a repository or a project, there's like issue template which is like issued by the project maintainers or owners, which people are like very much urged to follow, because those actually give you a lot of insight what the issue is about. So if you have if you're using a screen util for React, and if you can't get the accurate width of the screen, so you might fill out the whole issue template. You might just say, this is what the code is happening. This is what the log for the error is. Basically, the stack trace of the log itself. And you might look into what is actually having those logs as well, because in those logs you actually get to know कि कौन से file में कौन सा line में कौन सा error हो रहा है. So that actually helps in understanding where the issue is happening as well. And there are a lot of issues actually have those minimum minimum viable repositories created with them, which actually demonstrate where the issue is. Like for example, if you have an issue with the controller in SGS, okay, so they might create a new repository just showing where what the issue is. So they also support their issues with the small repositories which they create, just to show like the minimum, just to recreate that issue in a very much a new project. Like I would say like that. So they might even support their issues using those repositories as well. This gives you a lots of insight where the issue is happening, why is the issue happening, and what you can do to fix it. So I would say that is one thing you can look out if you want to look out for good issues. Second thing, there's like issues regarding improvement of documentation as well. So even that also has to give you like proper idea of what has to be documented. Like for example, React ne abhi dot use memo, new React hook nikala, and you have to. And they didn't give it. They didn't say ki this is the new hook which you have to document, or like there's a specific part which you have to document. So even those you can judge as well, because that gives you a lot of insight in what exactly is the issue is about. I would say that is the points which you should consider when you're looking into which issues you want to contribute against.
Okay, cool. So now my next question is if you're working on someone else's code base, right? So you get to learn a lot about what kind of tests they write, how they write their code, and all these things. So have you picked up any useful skills? And in general, what kind of soft and hard skills like people can expect developing for themselves?
So first of all, I just want to know what you mean by soft and hard skills.
What I mean by soft skills is basically your problem solving skills, thinking skills, analytical skills, communication skills, and by hard skills I mean your specific learning some like by hard skills I mean learning some kind of language proper like Java, JavaScript, or any framework or any library specifically, something like that.
So basically, if you start contributing into open source communities or like projects and stuff like that, you're forced to get to know about those new stuff as well. So that is one thing which I was opened up to. Like for example, if I'm working on my own open source project, and if I want to get this one specific feature to be, like for example, if I'm like this, I had this one project called Yazam Media, which is like a social media app which I made, just like trying to copy Instagram for features. Okay? Like for example, stories over here. So I wanted to develop stories feature as well. Okay? So I had one idea how to develop the stories feature. Okay? And that included programmatically screenshotting stuff. So that it forces you to try to search for libraries or projects which actually helps you in, achieving what you want to do. So that's one thing you can say it makes you like very much good into like googling out stuff and like understanding stuff as well. One thing I wanted to add is like you get to know what are the industry standards are, like when it comes to soft skills or like hard skills. Hard skills, I would say one thing is like what design patterns they are using, or like what sort of coding style they are using. Like for example, Airbnb has their own coding style for JavaScript projects. You get to know how to implement those in other projects as well. And then soft skills, I would say, is like they might be communicating using this IMs such as like Discord, or like there's another app which I forgot. I think you might be knowing. I forgot. There's like Slack. Yes, Slack. They might be even communicating using Slack. So even like properly communicating those issues, or like properly communicating within those forums or like chat forums, that becomes an important skill as well. Because if you're like even asking in Stack Overflow as well, you have to make sure that the issue which you're describing is as accurate and as insightful as possible for the other person to understand as well. That helps you a lot in a long way as well, because if there's like a deadline which you cannot, if there's a deadline which you feel like is like, very much stringent, and you feel like you can't meet the deadline, so you can properly communicate your side of things to the manager as well. That helps you a lot in communication, I would say as well. This is what I feel is like the biggest thing you can learn when contributing to open source projects.
Okay. Now, can you like just walk us through all the steps of contributing to an open source project from start to finish?
So for this question, can I share my screen and walk you through what I do for contributing into new projects?
Okay, so guys, one thing, Varun is gonna share his screen now. So if you guys want to see the video version of it, you can come to the YouTube channel, my YouTube channel, look at it. Over here, there'll be a timestamp below where the question would be present. You can just directly jump to that and see the video version of it. But if you want to listen to keep on listening to the podcast, Varun will try to explain as well as possible for you guys, so you can follow along with us. Yeah, Varun, go ahead.
Yeah. So the particular repository scheme which I've opened up right now is called FLChart. This is a Flutter charting library which I actually used in one of my projects, I think 2-3 months back. And I was very much interested in this project because it is a very interesting, because there's like a lot of things which you can do with this one specific package. So right now I'm on the code screen. So for now, as I said before, you can start contributing into projects or packages which you already use in your own projects as well. So now I have used FL chart in one of my projects. So I start looking into the types of issues which are in FL chart. So I will go into the issues tab over here. As you can see, there are loads of issues actually created over here. There are 179 open issues. So the next step I would say is clicking onto the labels button over here, because there's one specific label called as good first issue. Like for example, there is one, and look at the description for it as well. The description reads as such: good for newcomers. So if you're interested in contributing into this project, you will directly go into the good first issue section. So as you can see, there are 7 open issues over here. There's like this one simple issue which I can see is called add text inside bar to bar chart. Okay, so I would open up this issue and I just start reading the issue with what actually they are saying. Like, it's saying, is it possible to have text inside the bar in a stacked bar chart like the image? So they've clearly said what type of issue they actually have, and they what kind of addition they want to do in the project as well. And they've also given a good a good image as well, just to describe what kind of issue they are facing. For example, there's this chart which you have given, and they want to insert text boxes inside that bar. And there's like some communication to that as given over here. Any solution to that, or like I think there isn't a quick trick. We need to implement this feature. And the owner has actually assigned the good first issue. So I've read the issue. I feel like this issue is a good issue to work on, because it is actually, I feel like this is quite simple, because it's like adding text inside a bar. So I feel like this is a good first issue for me to get into. So I would open up a new tab over here for the code. Okay. So there's a lot of files over here, but you just have to go into the, you have to start and try and read the nitty-gritty stuff. So I would go into the lib folder, because Flutter projects actually have the lib folder which actually has the main code inside it. There inside there's a src folder which actually contains those source code for it. Okay. Now I would see that this is saying text inside bar to bar chart. And there are 3 folders given over here: chart, extension, and utils. So basically bar chart will be inside the chart folder. Then there's a bar chart folder over here. Okay. There's just one central file, I think, which is like a good starting point to start reading the code. Bar chart dot bar. So I would open that in the next screen. Okay, I would start reading. Let's try and start reading what the code is actually over here. There's a class called bar chart which actually extends a very custom widget implementation. Okay, I would go down over here, just see what the implementation is, and there's a lot of comments given over which you can try and read. There's it also looks like a stateful widget, because it actually has a state class as well. You would, as in a Flutter project, you would go into the build function, which actually helps to build the whole UI for the whole Flutter project. Okay? And I would go inside. There's like this access chart scaffolding widget. Okay? And then I would go into the bar chart leaf, and there's like data given to it, then target data given to it, and then key as well. Okay? So what I feel by reading this is like bar chart leaf is the main renderer for this thing, one single bar over here. So I would try and search for the code for the bar chart leaf. Okay? So I'm going to go over here. I would just see what code files are imported over. There's bar chart renderer, there's access chart scaffold widget. We definitely don't want to look into access chart scaffold widget, because that's a completely different widget implementation which you don't have to look into. There's the Scopatino library, which is like the standard Flutter library. Then there's the flchart.flchart. That's the very much main open import of the whole package. So there's just, I rule out only one package over here, which is like saying bar chart renderer.dart. So I would go in the bar chart renderer.dart file. Let's start try and read the code for it as well. Again, we see it's like a custom extends or custom widget implementation called leaf render object widget, and it's basically you would try and read what is actually happening over here. And as you read and read and read, you will see there's like data, there's target data, there's text scale and stuff like that. Then you will see a thing called bar painter as bar chart painter over here. This is a thing. You can see there's a bar chart painter over here, and there's a function called paint. So I would just assume that paint is something which helps rendering the widget as well. Okay. So bar chart painter. So bar chart painter has its own. Bar chart painter is like, I think in base chart painter, stuff like that. I'll go back. Oh, there is actually a bar chart painter.dart. So I would just open that up. And in the paint function, you see there's a canvas wrapper, there's paint holder and stuff like that. So, and you also get the data dot holder. You also get the data over here from which you're actually trying to build a chart upon. So using that data over here, you can actually build bars over here. Okay. So there's a draw bars function over here. You try and see where's a draw bars function you have actually. So this is the draw bar function over here. Again, you have the data inside it. Okay. Then you try go and read and read and read where what is happening. Then you see there is like a rrect thing. Rrect is actually a standard Flutter widget which they're actually using. So you can see that they're using bar rrect over there. So what you can do is like maybe wrap. I'm not totally sure because I did not test the code out. But what I would say is like you can directly just wrap this rrect widget into like a column widget and then add a text over it as well. This is one thing you can do. So as you can see, this is the type of mindset which is something I use when I'm looking into issues and stuff like that. And this actually helps read into a lot of code files which is like completely foreign to you, because this is not the code which I wrote. Okay, you can clearly see this is not actually my account. I am neophyte is not actually my account. But as you can see, this is the kind of mindset which you have to develop within yourself if you want to contribute into open source projects. Because after reading the issue, you have to start reading the code itself to understand what is happening, and then inside that code, you have to understand what the code is actually doing. Then you can find out a solution to the issue which has been generated over there, and then you can make the changes and then submit a pull request accordingly to say that yes, I have worked on this issue. So this is, I would say, is like good. I would say this is like a good walkthrough how to you can go about solving issues. So I feel like this is a good walkthrough of what the mindset should be when you're trying to contribute into a open source project.
Okay, as you all saw, this was the video version of the video demo of how to contribute to a open source project. Now I'll just ask Varun to summarize the whole thing once so that all the audio listeners can also understand how to contribute to it. So if Varun can just start.
Yeah. So first of all, the point becomes, how do you find new projects to contribute to? So as I said before, you can contribute to projects which you contribute to projects or like packages which you have already used in your own project. Like for example, I have used FL Chart in one of my Flutter apps. You can directly open up the repository for any of the package which you have actually used in your project, and then you go into the Issues tab. Into the Issues tab, there's a labels button over there which you can press and then sort by good first issues, which are basically issues which are helpful for newcomers to actually start contributing on. In that, I found one issue which I felt like enough information was given to me to work on. In this case, they wanted a text infograph on the bar chart, and they also showed an example via a small image as well, which they felt it is a good explanation. On that, I read, okay, this is something which I have to do. I got into the code. Next step is basically downloading the code and then working on the code and then making those changes, submitting a pull request, and after that, the pull request will get merged and by the the owners and the maintainers to the main repository.
So can you just explain me what a pull request is?
So pull request is basically a way of requesting to merge your changes to the code with the main branch of the code. If you understand branches, so basically, if you can understand branches properly, it's basically like there's a main branch which actually everyone uses in the projects, and there's your branch which you're actually making changes upon, which you want to get merged into the main branch, which is like the official branch where you can download into your projects and then start using the project itself. So a pull request is like one way of saying that I want to merge my changes to the code to your main repository. So that's a pull request.
So can you just clarify, do all pull requests get merged, or is it like if they find something wrong, they won't merge it?
So basically not all pull requests get merged because there's a lot of issues regarding behind that as well. Because maybe the maintainer thought, this is not an issue which I think we need to work on. Because sometimes they might even open up pull request for a new feature which they want to add to the project. But the maintainer think that I don't want to add this feature into this. So they might close a pull request over there. or they might feel that someone better can do properly, code this pull request thing up properly for them. So that's one thing I would say is like not all pull requests get merged, but like a good try should be given to at least get something merged.
As you said, not all pull requests get merged. So, is there any checklist that I should go through, or any beginner should go through, to just check out things that before I submit a pull request so that it gets merged?
So first of all, I would say first of all, on your own, which you could do is try and see if the code which you have written is the best optimized version possible in your opinion. If you can do that, first of all, do that. Second thing, properly documenting the code which you have written. That is by writing proper legible comments, understandable comments to actually accurately describe what you have done. And this is like, and then even a lot of projects have a lot of tests written for that. So a good thing would be to run those tests as well after changing code as well, and just to see if all the tests have passed. So at least you can understand if the changes which you have made is not breaking or like causing any regression issues in the project. Okay, this is one part which you can do. Second part is that even those projects have a pull request template as well, and in that pull request template they actually have a checklist given over there as well. Pull request template is basically something when you try and open up a pull request, there's like a template already given to you which you have to fill out. In that, they will mention some checklist which you have to follow. For example, as I said, proper documentation has to be written. The code has to be the best version possible code, and then also that all tests should pass. And there's like behind CI/CD pipelines also which will run just to see if all tests are passing like that. So I think this is like a good checklist to keep in mind if you want to contribute to open source projects.
So, like we talked about a lot of things right now. So can you tell me how did you feel when you first made like a pull request and it got merged?
That's a very special memory in my mind. So I was working with my club on working on a project, and we were like a team of developers working on it. Okay? And I was very much new. It was a Flutter project, and I was very much new to Flutter. So I was assigned you have to try and figure out the authentication system using Firebase for this Flutter project. So I was first of all very much new to Flutter. I was very much new to Firebase as well. So I did my best, what I could do to figure out the authentication system using the documentation Flutter and Firebase have on their websites. And I did my best over there, and I opened up a pull request. Obviously, there were some changes requested by them, and I actually did those changes as well. So it got merged finally after a few changes which was requested. And to be honest, it's a pretty much ecstatic moment because it's not like every day you make your own first pull request, and it's like your first time contributing into an open source project. So that's like a very special moment which lives in your mind as well. And I think even GitHub has like a which they give out an award to you for like a merging one successful pull request. It's like a very special moment in every developer's life.
All right, cool. So this was fun. So we talked a lot about open source today. So I think this is the end for the video today. Do you have any final words you want to say to people who are, just beginning their open source journey or are terrified of making their first pull request or just reading other people's code or anything?
I would just say that it's a band-aid you have to rip off. I know you might feel overwhelmed and stuff like that, but it's like it's not like you can delay that stuff, because again, contributing to open source is like very much a big bolster on his portfolio as well, because a lot of open source projects are getting funded nowadays. Okay? So you just have to rip that band-aid off. One day or the other, you have to do it, and what that day which you do now, and also when you're contributing into open source projects, you learn about new you learn about reading reading other people's code, read about a lot of new design patterns which you're utilizing, and it also like helps you in understanding how different companies actually contribute to each other's success as well. Like for example, how Microsoft is actually helping Facebook to develop the desktop platform for React Native. So even come to understand that as well. So it's a very the open source community is very helpful, I would say. And it's just a bandit you have to just rip off and start working towards.
Okay, man. Thank you, Varun. Thanks for coming to my podcast. It was fun. All right, man. Thanks.